Hello and welcome to another episode of All Fired Up with Brandon Ramsey. We're recording today's episode at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time, July 3rd. This is a Wednesday, obviously right before the July 4th holiday, and we have plenty to talk about today. As always, first, right off the top, if you are here watching live, please make sure you are subscribed to the Brandon Ramsey College Basketball Show YouTube channel, which is where every Wednesday at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time we host these live episodes of All Fired Up with Brandon Ramsey. And then also make sure you find the Brandon Ramsey College Basketball Show on podcast. Those will be coming back in a few weeks, doing some things behind the scenes to make that show bigger and better than ever. So looking forward, probably towards the end of July, having the Brandon Ramsey College Basketball Show back on Mondays and Fridays. And then also to catch all of my content, whether it be my written work on KentuckySportsRadio.com, part of the On3 Sports Network, whether it be the YouTube show, the podcast, all of that good stuff you can find promoted on my Twitter account at BRamseyKSR. So be sure to follow along there as well. But again, please make sure you are subscribed to the channel here. Leave it a like if you're here watching live, and feel free to jump into the chat as we go along. But today's primary topic, we're going to break down last week's NBA draft. Our last episode of All Fired Up, we kind of previewed things to come on what was last Wednesday night, and then the second round going into Thursday. But today we're going to take a look back, hand out some draft grades, what the picks we liked, what some of the picks we didn't like, some of the winners and losers from a team aspect, and then also probably talk a little bit about some of the latest news, rumors, rumblings around Kentucky's 13th scholarship and where they may be looking to use that. So, in terms of the draft, it was interesting that when you're looking at kind of the winners and losers, the one clear winner is the country of France basketball. Three of the top six picks, including the top two picks, Zachary Rissache going number one to Atlanta. You have Alex Sarr going number two to Washington. Then at number six, you had another French professional basketball player going to the Charlotte Hornets. So kind of crazy to see, that is the continued globalization of basketball. Three of the top six picks, including the top two, being from France. But beyond that, in my opinion, the clear winner of the 2024 NBA draft was the Minnesota Timberwolves. I think they hit a home run with both of their first round picks. At number 8, they made a trade with the San Antonio Spurs for a couple, I think like 2030 and 2031 pick swaps. So we're talking, a ways down the road. And they get up to number 8 to take Rob Dillingham, obviously out of Kentucky. I think that he pairs perfectly in the backcourt, just as a dynamic, explosive playmaker with Anthony Edwards. Obviously, you still have Karl Anthony Towns there as well. Mike Conley is not getting any younger. I think he's going to be 37 this coming year. So, you probably see Rob Dillingham playing behind Conley a little bit, but I mean, that's like the most consummate professional in all of the National Basketball Association. So I think for Dillingham to be able to learn alongside, behind, with a guy like Mike Conley is a perfect situation for him. The Timberwolves already don't really have any concerns defensively. They need some scoring punch and some offensive firepower to continue to take steps forward as Anthony Edwards becomes one of the faces of the NBA. We saw them make the Western Conference Finals this season, and I think that down the road, a guy like Rob Dillingham can help them take that next step. And then probably just as much as I like the Rob Dillingham pick at 8, I like the Terrence Shannon Jr. pick at number 27 even more, especially from a value proposition. But I think that you get a lottery pick type talent, in my opinion, a guy that I would have had probably on the top 10 to 12 of any of my personal draft boards. You get him at number 27, especially after being cleared of all of the off the court stuff. Like I don't really understand, especially in a weaker draft, how you can watch college basketball, break down the tape, do all the combine stuff, take care of the off the court side of things, and then still have Terrence Shannon Jr. go at number 27. To me, that's where I would have seen him falling had some of the off the court stuff not been cleared. But now that that's a non-issue, I don't see how he's not one of the 10, 12 best players in this draft. So to me, when you fill fill a need at a guard spot like you did with Rob Dillingham, and then you just get one of the best value picks of the draft in Terrence Shannon Jr. and a guy with size and two-way ability that obviously fits what Minnesota already is about. I think that you get just a home run draft here in 2024 for the Minnesota Timberwolves. BBN, I'll get to your question just a little bit later when we talk about Kentucky's 13th scholarship. I'll begin with that after I get through the NBA draft stuff here. But to me, you could probably look at this next one as a winner or a loser, depending on your kind of your perspective or your way of looking at it. Dalton Connect, obviously a loser on draft night as he falls to number 17. This is a guy that was projected as high as number 5 in a lot of mock drafts. I think he's the third best player in this NBA draft. A guy that, to me, you know exactly what you're getting in an otherwise not very talented draft class when you can get a 6'5", 6'6", really good athlete who can shoot the crap out of the ball like Dalton Connect can. I want that guy in this draft. So you could characterize him as a loser in terms of, obviously lost out on a lot of money, the opportunities that come with being a higher draft pick. I'm sure it doesn't feel good when you're sitting there in the green room and pick after pick is going and your name is not getting called. We obviously see it happen every single year, but Dalton Connect was the guy that it happened to this year. However, I think that you could also characterize him as a winner because now he goes to potentially a better situation, a team that's, prepared to make a push to the playoffs and possibly beyond in the Los Angeles Lakers. Now, once again, it's a matter of perspective. Is playing for a first-time head coach in J.J. Redick a good thing or a bad thing? Is having to play with LeBron James a good thing or a bad thing? There's a lot of positives that come to it. You're generally pretty good. You have one of the best passers to ever play the game of basketball. But there's obviously a lot of circus that comes along with it. And, some things don't always fit great around LeBron James, especially at this point in his career. And then, what are we going to do with the potential circus that is him hiring as podcast co-host to coach the team? I don't know how all that will come, but I do think that you always need floor spacers around LeBron. And JJ Redick's already talked about, wanting to play a little bit more through Anthony Davis and some of the things he can do on the perimeter, in handoff and ball screen situations and, throwing it into the post and spacing the floor around him, along with LeBron. The shooting and the size and the athleticism that Dalton Connect provides, to me, is the perfect fit in a place like LA with how they are currently constructed. So I think that Dalton Connect, though I'm sure, like I said, it doesn't feel good falling 10, 12 spots in the draft on draft night. I think he can turn a negative situation into a real positive sooner rather than later with his impact in LA. One of my personal favorite picks in the draft was the Chicago Bulls at number 11, taking Matas Buzelis. This is a guy that not all that long ago, and really for a pretty prolonged period of time, was thought to be the best player in this otherwise not very good draft class. Matas Buzelis is certainly a guy that was projected number 1 in 2024 for a good amount of time. He has size. He has fluid athleticism. He's highly skilled. There are a lot of things like he's has a professional pedigree coming from G League Ignite. I think this is a guy, he's on the short list of players, in my opinion, that have a real chance to be the best player out of this draft class. And you get him at number 11. And especially, just kind of the added bonus of going to your hometown team. Now, I know he's not necessarily like, he has a lineage from European countries. I forget exactly where, but I think he's pretty much born and raised in Chicago. So getting to go home, quote unquote, to Chicago, play for a Bulls team with a little bit of young talent around him, I really like that fit. And I just think that the value at number 11, getting a guy who could be the best player in the draft, home run draft pick for the Chicago Bulls there. Two other guys that are a little bit similar that I really liked ahead of the draft and to me got really good value spots at number 15 and number 21, respectively. Khalil Ware out of Indiana going 15 to the Miami Heat, and then 21, Yves Missi out of Baylor going to the New Orleans Pelicans. These are two guys, again, in a draft where maybe the top-end talent isn't as high as what it generally would be, or from a GM's perspective or a team perspective, what you would want it to be. Then therefore, I'm looking at guys where I can close my eyes at night and I know exactly what their role is going to be in the NBA. To me, Khalil Ware and Yves Missi, they fit the 5 position at a really high level right now in the NBA because these guys are rim runners, they are lob threats on the roll, and they are high level rim protectors as well. I like Khalil Ware going a little bit higher. I would have had him a little bit higher too because to me, he projects as a guy that could become, and I hate player comparisons, but this is one I've really honed into in this cycle, and that's Khalil Ware and Miles Turner. I think he's enough shooting upside to make some threes like Miles Turner certainly turned himself into a real 3-point shooter in the NBA, but what he does at his length and his size at a true 7 foot, protecting the rim, finishing above the rim offensively, I really, and you can't go. If I'm getting drafted, I want to be drafted by the Miami Heat. It just seems to work out more times than not. Really like that pick at 15, picking up Khalil Ware out of Indiana. For a lot of the same reasons, Yves Missi at 21 for the Pelicans, just a freak athlete. This guy has a pogo stick on both ends of the court, plays well above the rim. I think you're going to see him be excellent as a roll man in pick and roll situations going forward there in New Orleans. And then what he can do as a rebounder, rim protector from day one. Like, if this guy's your backup 5-man, I think you have a chance to be really, really good. So I think great value picks there by the Heat and the Pelicans at 15 and 21. Then rounding out the first round, you have to give a tip of the cap. And it's just funny how some of these things go full circle and sort of prove why some teams are the way that they are. Boston Celtics just won their 18th championship as a franchise just less than a couple weeks ago in the NBA Finals, just kind of rolling through the Dallas Mavericks. Then what do they do on draft night? Yeah, they have the last pick of the first round in a less than stellar draft class. Oh, they just hit a home run by drafting Baylor Shireman out of Creighton at number 30. This is a guy that to me could be a top 20 type pick. And again, he fits that mold of what I would be looking for in this draft. If that top end talent, if that ceiling isn't there, then I'm drafting for roles. And just like we talked about with Khalil Ware and Yves Missi, where I know exactly what they are. I think those are backup 5 men at the very least in the NBA for a long, long time. I feel like I know exactly what Baylor Shireman is in the NBA. And he is a spot up 3-point shooter with a little bit of secondary playmaking ability as a passer with some size, left-handed on the perimeter. This guy can step in right away and be your 9th, 10th man. And you just got him as the defending national champions at number 30 in a draft that stinks. So to me, home run for the Boston Celtics and obviously a home run for Baylor Shireman. You get a chance to go and carve out a role right away for the defending NBA champions. You can't ask for much more as a rookie. Travis says, a very needy question, but I didn't think there was going to be a show today. What did I miss? We're just running through the kind of some draft grades. Talked about how I really liked the Minnesota Timberwolves draft. Dillingham and Terrence Shannon Jr. Talked about Dalton Knecht falling at number 17 to the Lakers and kind of his fit with LeBron. And, do you want to be drafted by the Lakers? Do you not want to be drafted by the Lakers? Is that sort of a win or a loss for Dalton Knecht falling to them? I really like the Matas Buzelis pick to the Bulls. So talked about that. Then Khalil Ware, Yves Missi, some of my other favorite picks as well. And then I think you're pretty much caught up to where we're talking about here. Baylor Shireman going number 30 to the Celtics. 3 more topics here connected to the NBA draft. One, you got to talk about Kyle Filipowski. Obviously, a crazy, bizarre, and honestly, at least maybe not even potentially, probably just truly sad situation. He's 20, his girlfriend's 28. I don't think that's that big of a deal. But, if it's true that he's kind of cut off from his family and, there might be some concerns about when this relationship started and how it started and some things like that. But then, also kind of coming full circle a little bit to get drafted by the Utah Jazz, slides a little bit there into the second round. And all this stuff kind of immediately comes out. I obviously just hope that things work out for him and his family and all that kind of stuff. But just a bizarre draft night storyline. And, I always feel like there's something that comes out, like maybe a a failed physical or a concern about a heart condition or something that came up in an interview with a team or whatever. Like we generally get one sort of, oh wow, I didn't know about that storyline post draft. Not sure we've heard something quite like Mormon grooming come up in post draft breakdowns, but that was one of the storylines of the new 2-day Thursday edition of the second round of the NBA draft was kind of this news. Obviously, another part of that was Bronny James, in fact, being drafted number 55 by the Los Angeles Lakers. Now, we already talked a little bit about the Lakers, and again, from Dalton Connect's perspective, like, do you like the idea of being the guy that's a part of this potential sideshow between Bron and Bronny? I don't know, and to me, like there's obviously levels to this discussion. First, like the potential nepotism involved, and we'll get back to that in a second. Potential nepotism involved with him getting drafted. If they want to draft him, whatever. You're probably not getting a whole lot of value at number 55 anyway. So if you want to draft Bronny James, draft Bronny James. Then you have, it sounds like he's probably going to make the team and get a guaranteed contract, all that. Well, if you want to do that, it's probably taking a step further, but I kind of take that as a given. Like there's no point in drafting him if you're just going to stash him in Santa Cruz in the G League or wherever they play. Like kind of to me, it came with the territory that he was obviously going to be on the team, or else why would LeBron even care about the Lakers drafting him if they weren't going to physically be on the same bench and traveling together and all that kind of stuff. Now, obviously, the third rung, and what we still are yet to see, won't see for a little while until the season starts, is he actually playing the games. I think there's a path to Bronny James having an NBA career. I don't think he's anywhere close to it as we sit here today. So how much of an expedited timeline does he get? Are they really just going to sit him there for 82 games with maybe some mop-up time, or is he actually going to get, is he going to get real minutes? Is he going to earn? I mean, let's not completely take it out of his shoes. Like, yeah, there's a world where he's better than what we think. We see it every year. So it will be interesting to see how that plays out. But to me, it wasn't shocking to see the Lakers draft him. It's not shocking to see the Lakers sign him. Now the next step is going to be how much, if at all, are they going to actually play him? And to me, that is a separate discussion. Holler Talk says, thanks for joining us, by the way. Love that Minnesota came straight out and told us you don't make a move like that unless all the chips on Rob. Yeah. To me, that it does show, and that's a really good point, that it shows their belief in Rob Dillingham. Like, I don't know where they had him, on their own draft board, but clearly they had him high enough that they wanted to make a trade to get him there at 8. So I think they clearly have a plan in place for how they're going to utilize him. Eddie Congress says Bronny is the Lakers' Saul Smith. Yeah, there might be, which, to what we were just talking about, Saul Smith did play in the games a little bit. So maybe Bronny James will too. But one thing I do want to address, and I don't want to, the last thing I'm trying to do is fight with Stephen A. Smith or, one of these crazy people that have shows on major networks. But, at all the, national talking heads and started right on the draft. Like we all had to start we all had to come around to, well, yeah, maybe it's nepotism, but let's not act like there isn't nepotism on all 30 teams, in the front office and all these different things. And, you can't get mad about Bronny James being drafted if you don't get mad about the assistant GM being the son of the owner or whatever. And that's just a load of crap, because yes, I can definitely differentiate those two things. And you're an idiot if you can't, because a lot of these front office jobs, first of all, they don't really impact anything. Like if the owner wants to hire his son or daughter to some made up position and pay him too much money, $250,000 a year to do nothing, that ain't really hurting anybody, because a lot of times even those nepotism hires in these front offices is like, you're not really even taking a job away from somebody. It's just an added created job. Like, it ain't that big of a deal. You're not putting somebody out of work. You're just there, and you probably don't even do anything anyway. And whether anybody ever listens to you or not is up to you. So to me, like, this is a whole new level of nepotism because this impacts what happens. Like, if it is absolutely taking a draft pick away from somebody else. If he plays in the games and doesn't deserve it, then that's a whole new like competitive issue almost actually. So yes, to me, like this idea that you can't be mad, and I'm not mad about it. I don't care. Like I actually kind of think it's cool. As a fan, I'm excited to see what happens. But to me, to try to compare like front office nepotism to roster nepotism makes zero sense because to me they are not connected in any way, shape, or form. I think that roster nepotism can potentially be a like legitimately big deal. I don't think that like workplace nepotism in a lot of ways is generally all that big of a deal. Should be noted, I work for my dad, so I don't. Maybe that's part of it. I have no idea, but so that's just the way I look at it. To me, they're completely separate issues that I think you are allowed to be mad about. Like it to me, it's just, it is different, and but like I said, we'll see how it goes. And I do think we have to be prepared. Like you have to be fair to Bronny in that, like we need to see it play out. Like if he plays and it's okay, then we all just need to shut up and deal with it. Like it wouldn't be fair to Bronny now at this point to act like that the only way he ever possibly plays is nepotism. To me, that's where we need to draw the line. Not that we can't talk about the nepotism. It's that we can't act like it can only possibly be nepotism. There's a lot of people who are, could be labeled as nepotism hires who end up being great. A lot of times the second generation ends up making a company or something better than the first generation did. So it's not like it can't happen. And I think that is actually where we do need to draw the line in our discussions about Bronny James. Lastly, I do want to touch on this because I obviously like him so much. You see all the Kentucky stuff. Antonio Reeves going number 47. I think it was actually drafted by Orlando, but immediately got sent to the Pelicans. Again, to me, he's a guy that fills a need. This guy's a scorer, high-level shooter. To me, one of the best shooters in the NBA draft. Really happy for Antonio Reeves. Then rounding out the Kentucky discussion, pretty much right after the fact, or after the draft concluded, Justin Edwards, who did go undrafted, was signed by the Philadelphia 76ers. And to me, that's an interesting situation. We see it every year where I do wonder how much of that was his agency. I think he's with Clutch, so obviously a powerful agency. How much of this was like forcing their hand to the 76ers? And once, let's see, the 76ers had the 41st pick in the second round. So it's like once they didn't take him at 41, I wonder how much Clutch was kind of playing their hand to get him not drafted so that he could sign with Philadelphia. That's just a theory of mine. I have no idea how much truth there is to that, but I do think that, things like that do certainly happen. And that's a situation where I could see it happening. And honestly, for Justin Edwards, I mean, a lot of times you are almost better off going undrafted so that a team that really wants you can get you, or a team that feels like they have a fit for you, than is getting drafted randomly by somebody in the second round. Yeah, Eddie, I definitely agree with you. I would have been probably more upset about the situation if Bronny goes drafted and Antonio goes undrafted. I might be having a whole different tune about this sort of thing. Lastly, to wrap up the show, Kentucky's 13th scholarship, kind of back in the news this week after on, I guess, would it have been Monday when Jeremiah Fears, he's a top 30, top 35 recruit, 4-star point guard out of Arizona Compass Prep, but he's an Illinois native. He was committed to Illinois on Monday. He announced he was going to decommit from Illinois and then also enter the class of 2024, reclassifying to enter college now. Pretty quickly, he heard from Kentucky and seemed pretty excited about it. I think there's some familial connections there to maybe either some staff or just Kentucky in general. His older brother, Jeremy Fears, plays at Michigan State, which actually was just granted a kind of a hardship or medical red shirt. He was shot in the leg this season. I think he only played about 12 games for the Spartans before that incident happened. So he's going to get 4 years of eligibility going forward, which is great for him. Both these kids played for Indy Heat on the EYBL circuit, so I've had a chance to see these guys play for a long time. Big fan of the Fears family and the kids as players, and know some people personally that have recruited them and coached them. So I know they're great people, very good players, talented playmakers. As it pertains to that 13th scholarship, to me, there's kind of three worlds here in terms of Fears and Kentucky. One, he embraces the idea that he's playing behind Kirk Risa and Lamont Butler for, a learning on the job freshman year to then project to be PG1 as a sophomore in 2025. I'm totally fine with that if he's willing to accept the idea of getting probably relatively limited minutes. Option number two is if through 2-3 weeks of workouts, Coach Pope isn't prepared to play Lamont Butler very many minutes at point guard. Remember, at San Diego State, he's a guy that played alongside another point guard for most of the minutes, especially the last 2 years when the Aztecs were really good and Lamont Butler was really good. He did a lot of that, not necessarily being the primary ball handler at all times. So if you're worried about his ability to do so at Kentucky and you want to play Krisa and Fears as your point guards, I could see that happening. I don't really think that's the case, though. I think Lamont Butler is a good enough point guard that you can roll him out there. And then the other one is that this isn't going to work, and you probably just kind of move along, and you make the courtesy phone call, you kick the tires on it, you learn what the situation is, and then you probably move along, because I do think, especially at this point, like these players have played together now, these 12 new guys, Kentucky, they've played together now in 4 hours a week that you're allowed with the ball for probably week 3 now, at least, maybe week 4 of their workouts. So, and it is on paper a pretty complete team. Now, we can all, in a different show, we can discuss, is it talented enough? Is it good enough? But to me, those are separate issues. I do think it's a complete team at this point, and we'll decide later down the road if it's talented enough, good enough or not. But I don't think you want to upset the apple cart for anything other than a home run situation. So to me, there's two types of people that you're looking for in this 13th and final spot. And Jeremiah Fears is the perfect example of a guy that can come available and kind of why you leave this spot open. It might just not be the one that ultimately fills the spot, but then you're looking for two types of players. One is a guy who's just clearly better than the guys that you have, where it's like, okay, now we shift everybody, maybe he's not the best player, but like, okay, we just found our starting 3-man, or we just found our starting point guard. And then you don't really worry about it. If it upsets the apple cart and somebody leaves or somebody's upset, you deal with it because you just got a lot better. I don't know if that's the case with Jeremiah Fears. And then also, to me, the other scenario, probably the more likely scenario at this point in the game, is a developmental piece. Almost like a draft and stash international guy, or a reclass guy who's willing to, almost redshirt for a season, or, another, just get a normal recruit out of 2024, or a transfer who was essentially willing to redshirt for a year and develop and grow and be ready 2-3 years down the road. To me, those are the types of players that you're looking for to round this out. To me, Jeremiah Fears is maybe a little bit too much in the middle of that, because I think there's a lot of places where he can go and play right away this year. I just don't know if a backcourt that has Kirk Risa and Lamont Butler in it is that spot. And if he knows that, that's okay. But it's kind of like walk-ons too. Like, I want my walk-ons to know they're never going to play. I kind of want this 13th guy to either be, heck yeah, I'm one of the best players on this team, and we all know that from day one, or I know I'm not going to play. To me, Jeremiah Fears is in the middle of that discussion. One more comment here from Eddie Congress. And I need to get back to BBN real quick. Sorry about that, BBN. Reclassifying and expecting immediate PT is just not practical anymore with tons of fifth-year seniors and 22-year-olds dominating college basketball. I think that's true at Kentucky. I think that's true at a lot of probably the top 25 rosters in college basketball, especially when you're considering a kid that's not necessarily we're not talking about a top 5, top 10 player in the class. We're talking about a really good player, but he's a 4-star, top 30, top 35 player. So he's not necessarily, it's not AJ Dibansa or Cooper Flagg or, Cameron Boozer, guys like that. So to that extent, I agree with you. But there's a lot of, if he goes to, if he goes to Georgia Tech or probably even Georgia, he can step in and help. I don't want to have to guard the ball screens in the SEC this year if Jeremiah Fears is involved. He's going to be a problem for people, but it's just part of it. Going back to BBN off the top, which I kind of glossed over. Quick question. Why do you think we've missed on key recruits like Will Riley and others? Should we be concerned? I mean, there's part of me that I don't even know if that's true to this point. I mean, we're talking about some reclass kids. We're talking about some portal guys, Great Osabor, different things that we've missed on. I'm not going to be concerned about anything. And I know people are always going to say this, well, you're never concerned. You're never concerned. Here's when I'll be concerned. If in the 2025 class, with a full kind of traditional recruiting cycle that Coach Pope will have since getting the job, if he doesn't land any 5-star recruits, or let's even expand, if he doesn't land any top 25 high school prospects, then I'll be concerned. Right now, I don't think we've really missed on a whole lot of guys like that, where we truly pushed all the chips in, wanted them, and then didn't have, like the Great Osabor situation. Yeah, I think we really wanted Great Osabor, but then he pumped the brakes a little bit. We might have still been able to get him, but we wanted, it's bird in the hand versus 2 in the bush. We went with Brandon Garrison, who was ready to go. And I think that makes it not an apples to apples comparison. But yes, if we go into 2025 without a top 25 prospect, then we can have this conversation again, and I'll address some concerns about the recruiting level that Coach Pope can have. Well, that'll do it for today's episode. We dove into some NBA draft stuff. We talked about Kentucky's 13th scholarship and Coach Pope's recruiting here going forward in 2025. Next couple of weeks, we may or may not have shows. Just stay tuned to me on at Ramsey KSR. I'm going to be in South Carolina for 2 weeks, covering Adidas 3SSB and Nike EYBL Peach Jam. Travis, it's a bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bush. It's a pretty common saying. But yes, I'll be in South Carolina. Yeah, I went to Hanover, Trav. If you forget, everybody in Costa Rica knows that as well. But next couple weeks, shows may not air. We'll just have to see about that. Like I said, I'll be in South Carolina covering Adidas championships and Peach Jam, so that'll be fun. Regardless, but yeah, might be able to do one out there, but might be in the gym at 12:30 on Wednesday. So anyway, please make sure you are subscribed to the Brandon Ramsey College Basketball Show here on YouTube, so you don't miss the all fired up episodes whenever they air. Also, soon, the Brandon Ramsey College Basketball Show, probably beginning of August, is going to be back. I'm going to have a producer, and everything's going to be much, much better there. The show was already growing at a great rate. I was really happy with how things were going, but I just want to take a little bit of a break. To me, this is a good time of year to take a little break and then come back bigger and better than ever. Also, just to keep up on all my stuff and to keep up with the upcoming schedule, especially with the podcast kind of in and out, the YouTube show up in the air for the next couple of weeks. Just follow me on Twitter at BRamseyKSR, and you will be up to date on everything. Thank you all for everybody who tuned in live. If you're watching this in the future, just leave it a like, leave a comment, and I'll get back with you, and hope you all have a great rest of your week.